In this video, we're going to take a look at a red ink by Akkerman, their number 17. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the red ink playlist, so if you wanted to see more, you can find that there. I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, no spread. We get shading in the extra fine. No shading, some shading in the medium. Not too bad. Not really in the stub. Now, the extra fine and the medium are the same tone, just a little bit lighter than the stub. Extra fine took 6 seconds to dry, while the medium took 14. Scrubby for both show some color variation. We're getting it in the writing, and a smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Sailor Rialo with a broad nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, some minor ghosting. There's no feather, no spread. There is no shading in the stub, but there are a couple of darker spots that happen in the extra fine and a couple of darker spots that occur in the medium. Now, the extra fine's the lightest tone on the page, with the medium being just a little bit darker than that and the stub being a bit darker than the medium. The extra fine took 9 seconds to dry, while the medium took 21. Scrubby for both are showing no color variation, but it does show up in the writing, and a smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down and then it's put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that this ink is fleeing from the water, really pushing its way up, gathering and getting darker as it gets towards the top. Now, the one on the right that's allowed to dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water, we see a line that's forming at the bottom where it's bonding with the paper given a little bit of time. There is some white separation whereas the water's pushing the ink away, but it does suggest that some of this ink might be a little bit resistant. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, no spread. We get no shading in the stub, no shading in the medium, only a few darker spots that occur in the extra fine. The extra fine is the lightest tone on the page, while the medium and the stub are the same darker tone. Extra fine took 5 seconds to dry, while medium took 12. The scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation, and there were a couple darker spots there. The medium shows none, and there was none. And the smear test you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it certainly spreads a little bit with it, but it doesn't become unreadable. It doesn't damage the information that's there. So you could feel safe using it in a note-taking situation if you wanted to go back and highlight. Water is reactivating and lifting most of this ink. On the top part of it, you see a little bit of the white of the paper start to come through, but a lot of it is still very pink. Pen flush does everything that water does, nothing more, and the 1/3 bleach solution destroys this ink, but it only took water to get this out of my pen. The next writing sample is done on TWSBI notebook paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no shading in any of the writing. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub or the medium. They're the same tone. Extra fine took 5 seconds to dry, while medium took 11. The scrubby of the extra fine shows some tone variation, but we didn't get any shading in the writing. Medium shows none, where we got none. And the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Akkerman's number 17 has a viscosity of 1.61, making this a wet ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests and all of that stuff's done, then down in the description is a link to that video. Now, let's take a look at moleskin paper. Not known for being fountain pen friendly, and it shows why here, but in what's the extra fine writing, I don't see this as horrible. Even the medium, as deep as it comes into the paper, does not come through the paper. So that's not so bad. Now, the medium has a ridiculous amount of feathering. The extra fine has tiny feathers throughout it. Both of them have no spread. Neither of them have any shading. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the medium. Extra fine took 2 seconds to dry. Its scrubby shows no color variation. There was no shading in the writing. In a smear test, you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Akkerman's number 17 has an average dry time of 11 seconds, so this is a fast drying ink. The last writing sample is done on crowd favorite 20-pound copy paper. Now, we don't have bleed through that touches the page, so this, as deep as it is not corrupting the next page. But all of this means you cannot use the back of the page or you'll lose both sides of notes in the extreme ghosting that's going on. They both have feathering that's very tiny. They both have spread. They have no shading in the writing. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the medium. The extra fine took 1 second to dry. Its scrubby shows no color variation. Neither did the writing. And the smear test, you can't smear it, so don't worry about it. Instead of finding inks that look like Akkerman's number 17, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a blue-black ink by Monteverde, cleverly hidden in the name Blue Black. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of Akkerman's number 17? This is not a general red. This is a very magenta leaning tone. That said, it looks good and has nice shading with decent tone variation by pen. It's a great alternative to red for me, and I'm happy to have sampled it, but don't see a bottle of it in my future. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I like its darker tones, and I don't worry about the shading with this. I'd prefer to use it from a wet to medium flow, medium or broad pen. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Noodler's Bad Blue Heron.